Good morning. Welcome to the best breakout session. Why is everyone squeezed over that side of the room? Is there some kind of magnet over there? Or is there cupcakes being served down the side? Something like that, maybe. Welcome to this session with Julien here. My name's Ken Banks. It does say that it's me in discussion with Julien, but that really makes no sense to me. So what we're going to do, given we've only got about 25 minutes to do this, before I ask any of my really smart questions, I was going to just throw it out first of all to you guys, because I'm sure that after Julien's presentation, which I thought was fascinating, really interesting for me, I was sort of worried that I wasn't going to be able to understand some of the stuff here. But what you presented just made a huge amount of sense, and it really kind of resonated with some of the work that I've been interested in over the years. But let's just throw it out. Do anyone, I know that Pat over there has a question, but does anyone have any questions they want to kick this off by asking in the audience? And then I can always ask Julien my questions if we run dry. Maybe Pat could start us, actually. Do we have a mic or anything for? Brilliant. Okay, thank you.
Julien, I really enjoyed. Is it on? Is it on?
Yeah,
there we go.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed the talk, and glad to see that you kicked off with Darfur and the Janjaweed, because that particularly is a great example which brings in many things, such as the ethics of AI too, when we talk about AI for good, for example. When I think of the Janjaweed, I think of the use of mobile phone data to understand movement patterns, and that anonymous mobile phone data can lead to the death of people. Much the same as AI looking at aerial imagery, for example, where a less than democratic government recently looked at images tweeted by people to understand where this group of people were, where an international development agency wished to drop aid, but the government sent something else in to kill those people. So when we talk about AI for good, what are your thoughts on the ethics of AI and how we have the feedback loops to understand how the AI is used to harm rather than do good? What are the responsibilities of anthropologists and others in this space?
One of my personal, this is a fantastic question, thank you. One of my worst nightmares, well, not the worst, I've got a vivid imagination, but it is to say, hey, I'm going to develop this system. Is this mic on, by the way?
Yeah.
Thank you. Is to develop something with amnesty, precisely around satellite imagery, remote observations, or anything else, really. And then this being then sold to, say, the Sudanese army, or, when we work with Human Rights Watch, I work with a geospatial team who does fantastic work identifying perpetrators, and at the same time, I have the privacy team lead who says, well, hell, yeah, hold a sec, are you just building an eye in the sky? And the answer is yes, we are. The flip side of the answer is also we are, but precisely as I mentioned, the notion of incentives and how AI gets you to stick to optimize for whatever society's incentives we have. What I'm trying to do is put these firmly into the hand and as much as I can in the control of those whose incentives are precisely around, well, doing good in a way that is defined in this case as NGOs. I know there's a lot of debate there, but precisely, and basically, I know that I personally as a technician cannot stop others from developing similar capacities. I also know that those who are trying to fix the incentives and to fix our society in the right direction do not yet have access to this tech. So rather than pulling my back on trying to stop the bad use of the tech, I'm trying to make sure that at least the good use can outweigh them. This being said, so anthropologists can come in precisely because obviously as we bring this tech to human rights researchers, that makes a lot of people from the domain of social science and anthropology being able to look at it and say, wow, this is feasible? But that's super dangerous for this and that. So part of my role is also precisely to discuss with these people and be able to flag what is coming up. I also really hope that anthropologists can go to conferences of machine learners and get to network there and to raise the need for thinking about the consequences of what you're doing. So case in point, because of the cost of high-resolution imagery, we have developed an algorithm that uses low-resolution imagery to detect buildings. Image is free from the European Space Agency. We won a competition organized by came number 2 on the competition, organized by the European Space Agency. And now, well, until recently we were looking at using it for amnesty. I think the project is still going to go on, just not in the AI for Good team. But when we did this, we had a big question here. Do we publish the algorithm, as is a scientific rigor? Do we publish the code, as is now the scientific rigor too, which I would advocate for, except, oh, hold on, are we giving everyone the key to something super dangerous? So we weighed the pros and cons. In this setting here, being a competition where there were many other teams and where the number one was also about to publish, but okay, the marginal harm done by us publishing is relatively small because the other competitors are going to show their methods which are equally capable. But the good done by publishing it is going to be actually quite good because more likely if we don't publish it, we remove ourselves, ethically minded tech guys, from the discussion. So in this one case, okay, we publish the algorithm and the code. Limited to what was done in this competition. Not all the bells and whistles, it would take a lot of work some work to be able to generalize. So we tried to work the line here. Same as in Darfur, we did not publish the data set. Too dangerous. And what I showed here is low resolution, and whenever we show screenshots, these are low resolutions or pixelated. We need anthropologists to force the conversations to happen and to also be the recipient of conversations from, well, let's take an example from some of my former colleagues at DeepMind, who made these fantastic algorithms that reads lips from YouTube videos. And they published a paper, and with some members of my old health team at DeepMind, they put a whole section around the benefit that this can have for people who essentially there's a whole condition where you can move your lips, but you cannot bring sound. So fantastic, there's something great that can be done here. What is not discussed in the paper is obviously the impact on surveillance. Now, my colleagues at DeepMind are extremely smart. They will have thought of that. I am pretty sure. So that means that somewhere in the organization, there has been a conscious decision not to mention the possible downside. I can see what? I don't see necessarily ill intent there. Again, I know that there's a lot of really, really well-meaning people at DeepMind. I really admire what Demis is doing. I'm not really, don't see any ill intent in there. But there is just a set of incentives. If a company puts an algorithm out there and they do mention, oh, here are the risks, how do they avoid the headline, this company creates a massive surveillance network? So there needs to be a room for this kind of conversation as the research happens, not even when it's done. And there needs to be both an education of the generation of machine learners, both those that have been there for a long while, but also the massive amount of young people who come in the field and to do machine learning. There's this term TensorBro. You might have heard of TensorFlow as a programming language. We used to have programmers, now there's TensorBros. They need to be able to have discussions to understand the impact of what they do. And then there needs to be some formal structure to be able to have these conversations, this time at an institutional level, as organizational level, before things are released.
Mm-hmm. I think we're realizing now increasingly that the mess that we're in is largely because the technologists have been allowed to just blaze a trail and leave everything else in its wake for the last maybe 10 or 15 years. We were chatting when we first met in reception at 8:30. If you look at the books on sale out in the foyer, over half, I think, have got very aggressive negative headlines. It's about battles, it's about doom, it's about the evil of this and the bad of that. And we've gone from a place almost 10 years ago where technology was seen as it's going to save democracy and connect us all in ways that were going to be beautiful and the world was going to be amazing. And now within a decade, we've almost completely flipped. And I think the fact that there's good AI is a good implication that there's obviously bad AI, right? What are your thoughts about how we've, in a very short space of time, almost gone from extreme excitement to extreme fear? And we'll come around to your question.
I mean, one aspect, okay, there's one aspect which is, again, Joanna mentioned during her talk, the polarization. And I think there is an aspect of polarization which means that whatever we talk about, whether we talk about it in good or in bad, we have incentives to go full on extreme about it. So that's a reason for the two extreme. However, there still is, the flip of sign. in a way, we're seeing it with AI, but we've seen it with any technology. ICT 4D, which also turned into ICT also has its surveillance aspect. So it's tech, not just AI. Or if you go back to the steam engine or to electricity or to the question here, I wouldn't say is necessarily intrinsic to tech. And here I'm venturing in your area of work. So please do shoot me down and bounce back on this. But it's really about how the goodwill and the initial really strong and good intentions get turned upside down by the mechanisms we have to put them in place.
Right.
So I genuinely know I need tons of people at Google, at DeepMind, even some at Facebook, fewer, but I know fewer, that are genuinely deeply well-intended and well-meaning. And they see the impact that they can have in positive. They want to avoid the negative impact. So there is something in the organization of humans at scale that just breaks at some point where, I don't know, my hypothesis, and again, please, that's why I'm so glad to be here. Is it that responsibility is seen as diluted, whereas it should be seen as multiplying? If we're 10 or 20 on working on projects, we don't each bear 1/10 or 1/20th of the responsibility. We should bear the full responsibility, each of us. Are there mechanisms of cultural organization that could prevent this drift? I think this is where there is a huge need for anthropologists and sociologists to help us design better ways. And this will come with AI, this will come with many other things.
Maybe it's share options and IPOs and big salaries that cause people to not worry so much about their ethics. We had a question just along there. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Gwen. Really interesting talk, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm curious to know if you were in a position to stop certain projects and move resource onto something that you felt really needed to do. Because there is no international government system or governance system as about what does and doesn't get worked on. But if I give you this magic wand, firstly, are you going to take it? But what would you move that resource from and to? Thanks.
Wow. So two questions. One which is a real minefield especially, even more so on a live streamed answer, which is what would I stop? To be transparent, I have no idea whether I would be able to stop, even with a magic wand, because their inventivity, researchers and humans, we are inventive. If we stop it in one place, it might pop up in another place. It's, the myth of the lone genius who just suddenly makes something out of thin air is rare. The ideas are in the air. Similarly, there's a question of, and this one is something on which I'm personally really torn, and I know this is going to be online, and I know that's going to follow me, but applications to military. Personally, I try as hard as I can to be a pacifist. My idols as a kid, I grew up idolizing Martin Luther King and Gandhi. As a beat up and bullied kid for 10 years in high school, nonviolence, I still wonder, damn, I wish I had been able to to fight back. So the thing is, I don't know right now. Okay, I loved at DeepMind that there was this engagement to not work on anything military. I've signed the letters, and that helped me sleep better at night. But at the same time, if there is an argument to be made, and I hate it, but I can't come to grasp with it to find an answer. There is, well, but if we don't do it for the military that are defending our set of values and ways of life, are we exposing ourselves to just actually fall to some much less scrupulous, let's say, state actor? I have not an answer on that. I'm taking the easy way out of, I'm just not going to work on that for now, and that's it. So that's my answer to how to stop it. To what to stop. I genuinely don't know. And again, that's where I would love to know more about the many research, the much research that has been done on the conflict resolution, on pacifism, and on this kind of thing. Now, that's one thing. What I would love to stop, though, is the application of these tools. So the key part about AI is that it enables a form of imperfect, but understanding, and understanding nevertheless, at a massive scale. The same way that just plain email suddenly allowed to scan for keywords in every message that was sent. And there's a usual answer, oh, but if you're just sending things by email, yes, there's no envelope, it's not encrypted, but don't worry, no one's going to snoop through it. Well, now we do have the ability to snoop through it. Oh, but yeah, you don't have, there's the founder or chairman of a very famous tech company who said, oh, but if you wouldn't want people to know about it, should you be doing it in the first place? That very same person lives in a house with walls. It's not a glass house. And he's not live streaming his life 24/7. So AI will allow to have this degree of monitoring for good purposes. Okay, let's avoid child pornography. Let's avoid terrorism. Okay, well, where does that stop? Now that we have the ability. So what I would like to stop is the application of these without any fail-safe or with very limited fail-safe measures to be able to pull the plug once we realize, oh, hold on, that's getting out of hand. So for me, that's really the thing here. In terms of what to focus on, I have my personal pet peeves and interests. I'm, again, through my life experience, I always feel for the underdog. But there is a whole community that has been thinking around these problems. There are 3 prisms you can look at the problems we face as a society, of course, and I'm not going to explain that to all of you. You can see that as human rights. You can see that as SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. You can see that as climate crisis. And there's a kind of Venn diagram between the 3. I'm not the person to decide on which ones we should work. I'm one of the persons who can be at the table to say, well, yeah, I think we should work on this. I can say that as a citizen. I can say that as an educated person. I can say as a scientist, hey, I know this we can do more easily, this we cannot. But very much, that is why putting the SDGs in place has been such a huge task, and why they're still lacking in many ways, because you could put everything and anything under them. It's because deciding what to work on is really difficult. That's why we have governments, that's why we have a society who's trying to find these things out. I don't think, as Ken, as you mentioned, the IPO incentives do not necessarily put the effort where it should be. They're seen as, the problems are seen as externalities. There is a big work of economics. I know that in the UK, social sciences and economics are guided by or incentivized by the same research council, because there is a whole lot of economic incentives to be put. How do we put a price? Is it one way to just use the economic system we have and then put there some factor in the externalities in there by paying for, yes, a carbon tax, of course, but by paying for the price of the diminishing resources you extract from the ground and the pollution you emit? This is way beyond my realm of competence, and precisely that's why I say, hey, I'm here to empower those who are more experts about this part of the bigger problem. I wish I had a better answer, I'm sorry.
Let's ask quickly as well, and then we'll go to the question there. There's this general narrative, isn't it, that technology is neutral and it can be used for good and for bad, and I think we see that playing out largely every day. We also have a very high concentration of people at this event who probably understand more than most people some of the privacy and the general concerns. How do we get the public, who are probably causing themselves great harm every day with their social media posts and the 11,000 pictures they're going to be of their kids before they're 18, how do we educate and try to at least create more awareness around that? Or is it like a drug that people just can't help but Instagram their kids on a beach? There's
both, actually. Education, as you mentioned, education is absolutely key. That's why it's SDG number 4, I believe. It's education of the new generation, education of the older generations who are confronting with these tools. So there's one aspect there. But saying, oh, it's a matter of education would be akin to saying, well, you as an individual are entirely responsible for your health. No, you're not. That's why there is doctors. And in this case, the algorithms, and that's why it goes back to incentive. You can think about algorithms the same way you think about a society. That's how I see it as an engineer and a scientist, in that we build algorithms, and we, the tech community in general, build algorithms to optimize certain metrics. And I think that might be what you were hinting at, actually, with your question around the addiction, is we hint at metrics around engagement. How many clicks do we get? How many time is spent watching these videos? You can justify it as because we want to show people stuff that they are interested in. But sadly, or you can otherwise justify it as we need to maximize the ad revenue. You know, both sides are there, and again, genuine meaning people, well-meaning people do see. Oh yeah, I want to show stuff that are relevant to internet users. And at the same time, the algorithm just latches on the fact that, oh, hold on, when I show this type of content here, which has these characteristics, I get a lot of really good engagement. People keep watching. Yeah, but it turns out this is the most polarizing aspect. This is how we get attracted to it because we deep down we are animals. You know, we have a limbic system, we have emotions, we have the amygdala just flaring our emotions up, which is amazing. That's what makes us humans, but can be hijacked. There's a fantastic book by Dan Ariely called Predictively Irrational, if memory serves me, and he's a fantastic researcher into the irrationality of people. I'm sure many of you, by your work, are familiar with that, and I've probably done work along these lines. He's been working with Google a lot. Now we're building algorithms that are really good at capturing that, whether we want it or not. And there, you don't get over biology. You do get over biology by yes, education in one way, but it's not going to scale fast enough. So you also do need to have to think ahead and say, hold on, no, there is a risk here. You can have regulation for that, and we should have regulation, and we should have regulation with massive teeth. Even a $5 billion fine is peanuts. When you look at the numbers, just go on Wikipedia, look at the revenue of the companies that you are trying to regulate, and realize 5 billion compared to how much they're getting. So first aspect, but the second aspect is also need to educate the technologists who are working on this, who are the front row, to realize, oh, hold on, no, I don't want to work on that.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I had a question over that way there. Yeah. Sorry. There's a microphone there for you.
I was just interested in your reflections on Simon's talk.
So that's a good one. To be honest, flying at 5 hours of sleep over 3 days means that half of Simon's talk went through 1 ear and went out, and I apologize to him, and I'm really sorry about that. What struck me is that the link between body and intelligence is actually at the heart of one of there are public talks about that, I'm not revealing any trade secrets here, of DeepMind's approach to AI and to the current field of deep reinforcement learning, which is the one that gives you AlphaGo, that gives you AIs or agents really playing Atari, that gives you agents playing hide and seek and learning to communicate. It's embodied cognition. That as humans, we don't learn just by reading Wikipedia. We interact with the world. My 2-year-old son bumps his head and knows he's not going to, run into the table again, eventually. Yeah. So the whole field of deep reinforcement learning is taking reinforcement learning from the 90s. It's essentially Pavlov's dog. You've got an agent acting in an environment, getting some observation and some rewards. That's the basic reinforcement learning. And pairing it with deep learning, which is this kind of pattern recognition or function approximator, and by which you model, in very roughly, the decision function, which is, I map the sequence of history and of observation, this history of observations, I map it to this action, which is the optimal one. You learn a function here. Deep learning is very good at learning functions, so you map reinforcement learning framework with deep learning function approximator. That gives you deep reinforcement learning. That's what DeepMind is doing all about. And this reinforcement learning is precisely about embodiment and developing intelligence through interaction. So in that sense, Simon's talk is spot on.
We have about 2 minutes left. So is there any quick, short, burning questions that people aren't? Okay, we have one at the front here. Let's just do this one. Thanks.
Yeah, you talked in your talk. You talked about having humans in the loop and that being important for the moment for keeping things aligned, I suppose, ethically. Do you think that will continue to be the case indefinitely,
yes.
or do you think the situation? Yeah, okay. So there are not. You can't imagine a future where humans in the loop will actually introduce more bias than would be present otherwise.
That's an argument that I've seen made by colleagues that I highly respect and esteem. That an algorithm is going to be unbiased and therefore fair. It's more. I would need more than a short. I'm terrible at short answers. First, the algorithm learns from how we behave generally, and from the data that it learns from. And these, well, we behave in a biased way, it's going to learn in a biased way. Even if you had a fantastic algorithm that magically could be unbiased, I still think that there is a whole aspect of emotions, of circumstances, that is going to be really, really, really hard to understand. That's why we have judges that take some what might seem as very surprising decision. This morning, in the US, the police officer who came into the flat of a young black man and shot him last year, she thought she was getting into her own flat, found someone, shot in the heart. She wasn't at the neighbors. So the trial verdict came out this morning, 10 years versus the 28 years that were requested, and the brother of the deceased actually went to hug the policewoman. Why that? Because there is a whole network of emotions and realizations of what is going on that is going to be hard to capture. Now, even if an algorithm were able to capture that, personally, and maybe I'm alluded, as Simon himself asked about himself, I do still feel some twinge of danger on something to be entirely automated. I can imagine cases where this is actually very helpful, and we've automated tons of stuff, and that's why we have emails rather than mailmen, because it's more efficient. But I think even there needs to be both a safety mechanism, first thing. What it would look like, I have no idea. We need precisely more than just techies on that. But also trying to avoid being too reliant on it, because if the machine is made by human, it can be unmade by human, it can be falsified by humans and by adversaries. And that's why for voting, I'd much rather vote on a paper ballot than on an electronic voting system. And there's no AI in there. It's just a matter of, okay, what are we reliant upon, and how choosing the right level of tech, the right depth of tech to make it robust.
Good answer to end it. I think that went way, way too quickly. I don't know about you, but it feels like we just got started. So yeah, next session starts in about 3 minutes. So you have 3 minutes to get to your next bit. Thanks to you, sir, for your talk and for being here. Thank you very much.